The Sooners lose to Ohio State in dominating fashion. The Big 12 Conference, for the third week in a row, has a big black eye. Things aren't pretty, folks. They are not pretty at all. AP poll is out. Oklahoma's out. Number 25 in the AP poll. They are out of the coaches poll. But I think there's some good news in that. I also think there's a silver lining in all of this when you're able to step out and see the big picture. I don't think it's as bad for Oklahoma as what we might see right now. I actually think there's some good news here and a reason to be hopeful. Obviously, not in the national championship hunt, but in the fact that this Oklahoma football team is not as bad as what a 1-3 record might indicate that they are. Welcome to Sooner Nation, the podcast for Heartland Sports, heartland-sports.com. I'm Matt Hofeld. Thanks for coming along with us and listening. Here's the thing: it wasn't even close on Saturday night. Wasn't even close. And I'm not talking about 45-21, the final score. I'm talking about the level of talent that's on the field. What Ohio State has at their disposal and what Oklahoma has at their disposal, night and day difference right now. And really, it comes down to two different positions. And I'll get into that here in a minute. But this loss, this 21.3 touchdown loss that Oklahoma suffered Saturday night at the hands of the number 3 team in the country at the time, is something that can be defined by two positions. And those positions are the same thing that cost them the season opener in Houston. There's a huge hole at cornerback. A huge hole. I mean, I can't describe in words how big the gaping hole is there. Oklahoma has Jordan Thomas, who is legitimately one of the top defensive backs in the nation. And across from him, I mean, it's anybody's guess who's going to start against TCU. Literally anybody's guess. Parrish Cobb, way out of his element last night. Micaiah Quick came in, but at that point, Ohio State had called off the dogs, so to speak. But you get the feeling that they could have done whatever they want to, and it's not like they were putting a superstar out there. Noah Brown, 5 receptions last night. 4 of those catches went for touchdowns. And I think coming into this game, coming into the game in Norman, he had a total of, he had a total of 1 touchdown. 1 touchdown coming into the game. 9 total receptions. Sorry. I'm reading this wrong. 1 touchdown coming into the game. 4 total receptions on the season. 1 touchdown, 4 receptions for the season. He's got 134 yards total this season. 72 of those yards came against Oklahoma Saturday night. 5 touchdowns on the season. 4 of those came against Oklahoma Saturday night. 9 receptions on the season. 5 of those came against Oklahoma on Saturday night. It's not like Ohio State was throwing out a superstar at Oklahoma's cornerback position. And I'm curious to know what has happened to Dakota Austin. Here's the guy who started the season, had a rough game against Houston, came in really, really late against Louisiana Monroe and didn't sniff the field. Didn't sniff the field Saturday night. Playing against a guy that had 4 receptions coming in on the season. The cornerback position is costing Oklahoma. And it makes the entire defense look bad. Oklahoma's pass rush, not bad. Oklahoma's linebackers, pretty good. Oklahoma's secondary, for the most part, solid. One position. And when one position is as bad as what it has been for Oklahoma for 3 games now, when one position is that bad, it makes the entire defense look bad. And it affects the entire defense because you have to do something different with your safeties. You got to roll your safeties in coverage. You can't play them closer to the line of scrimmage. You got to be careful how you blitz. because you're exposed at that one position. And you have to give Ohio State all the credit in the world. I mean, you have to give them the credit that they deserve for seeing that on film and thinking, we'll send our third best receiver out there and we'll attack him and we'll see what happens. JT Barrett wasn't exceptional. I mean, he wasn't. With all due respect, JT Barrett wasn't exceptional. 14 of 20, 152 yards. The Buckeyes were much better on the ground than they were through the air, which surprised me because up until Saturday night, opponents had had a hard time running against the Sooners. Curtis Samuel, if you read our keys to the game, we said he's the guy that you got to control, you got to contain. Curtis Samuel, 11 carries for 98 yards and a score. Mike Weber, 18 carries, 123 yards. JT Barrett, 17 carries, 74 yards. JT Barrett was not exceptional in passing, but he was exceptional in the opportunities that were given to him. Completed 14 passes, 5 of those to a guy who had 4 receptions coming in on the season. Noah Brown caught 4 touchdown passes. Tied his school record. Career night for this guy. And the only thing you can do at this point, the only thing you can do as an Oklahoma fan, you can get mad at Bob Stoops, you can get mad at Mike Stoops if you want to. And some of us will, and that's fine. That's part of the venting process. That's part of being a fan. But really, the only thing you can do is say, Urban Meyer found Oklahoma's weakness that had already been exposed, and they just hammered it. They took full advantage of what was there, and I think they could have thrown 8 touchdowns. I really do. And Oklahoma has a bye week now to get it fixed. And after 3 weeks of football, I mean, can it be fixed? Is that something that Oklahoma can come back and say, okay, well, I mean, what do you do? I mean, what is Mekhi Quick going to get the start now against TCU? Are you going to give Dakota Austin another opportunity? I mean, what is the psyche right now of Parrish Cobb? There's a true freshman out there running with some of the best athletes in the country, and he looked like a true freshman. And this isn't an experienced Ohio State team. It's just they are a talented Ohio State team. And they're a very well coached team. But even at that, there were moments in this game where Ohio State looked very much out of sorts. They ran out of timeouts in the first half. How many times did they have to call a timeout because they can't get lined up right? How many delay of game penalties did they have because they're not in where they're supposed to be? And yet even at that, because of one position, Ohio State was head and shoulders above Oklahoma's defense. And Oklahoma's got to get it figured out. Because there is good news coming that I promise you I'm going to get to. But on the flip side of the ball, you've got one position that's killing you right now. And I never thought I would say this. I never thought 3 weeks into the season that this would be the issue at hand. But on the flip side of the ball, Baker Mayfield, he's got to get it figured out. The Sooners put all their eggs in his basket. And he's got to get it figured out. Baker Mayfield has to figure out what kind of quarterback he is. And he's got to figure out what his limitations and what his abilities are. I believe that Baker Mayfield is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country. I believe that Baker Mayfield is one of the, if not the, top quarterbacks in the Big 12. I would have to think really hard about who I might take as a quarterback in the Big 12 over Baker Mayfield. Obviously, when you talk nationally, there's a couple of guys out there who wouldn't take this kid from Louisville right now. but he's got to get some things figured out. And I think he's pressing himself too much. I think he's overthinking things. Last year he was just a kid that went out and he let it fly. He went out and it was, it was shoot from the hip type of thing. And this year it was supposed to be different because it's his second year in Lincoln Riley's system, and I think he's overthinking it. Instead of the offense progressing under Baker Mayfield, it's regressed just a little bit because Baker Mayfield doesn't know his limitations just yet. And who doesn't like the long ball? Who doesn't? But Baker Mayfield is too infatuated with it. And he's overthinking. Perfect example of overthinking. Perfect example of overthinking is first and goal from the 3 yard line. And by the way, as I'm saying this, I'm going to throw some shade at Baker Mayfield and give him some blame here. But the first and goal at the 3 yard line, you've got Samaje Perine, you've got Joe Mixon. Just run the dang football. If they shut you down on first and goal, run play action second and goal. If you get to the goal line on first and goal, then punch it in. The first and goal at the 3 yard line, Baker Mayfield tries to do too much. And you end up with like second and goal from the 18? The Baker Mayfield of 2015 would not have done that. He wouldn't have thought that long. He would have thrown it away. He would have ran for it. He would have done something different than just hesitate and almost freeze. He's still elusive. He still has that moxie. But when you can tell a quarterback's overthinking things when he just freezes up. And we saw that a couple of times against Ohio State. It means he's processing. He's not thinking. He's processing. He's thinking. He's not reacting. And maybe I'm being harsh on Baker. I don't think I am. I think I'm being truthful. Baker Mayfield after the game last night. Here's what he said. Any game that you play at home and you actually get everything kicked, it just sucks. We had a great crowd, Baker Mayfield said, and I'm proud of the support they brought us. It's just the fact that we didn't play very well. Personally, I haven't played well this season. I felt that game goes to show that I've been the player. I felt that game goes to show that I haven't been the player that I was. I've been trying to work on it, and I've been trying to get better and better. But it just goes to show that in big games like that, I haven't played well. I let this team down. Coach Stoops can beat around the bush, but I let this team down with my performance. I need to lead better. I have to keep people positive, and I have to take responsibility for that loss. It's all on me at this point. So yeah, you can say I'm being harsh on Baker, but Baker's being harsh on himself. This is a big game for Oklahoma. Big loss for Oklahoma. But if you'll remember right, if you've been with us, I said this game, if Oklahoma loses, it would change only one thing. And that one thing it would change is that it would bring the national championship hunt off the table. And that's gone. And what that means for some Oklahoma fans is they're going to jump ship. What it means for some Oklahoma fans is they're going to want somebody fired. But for the majority of Sooner Nation, what it's going to mean is there's still a Big 12 Conference championship out there for grabs. And trust me, it is out there for grabs. And I get Debbie Downer, I get Negative Nancy, I get the what has Oklahoma done? What have they done to show anyone that they're capable of winning a Big 12 championship? And I think the question to that, or the answer to that question is actually they've done a lot. They've done a lot to prove that they can win a Big 12 championship. I mean, it's not like they've lost to Sisters of the Poor, Eastern Valley, Mississippi State. They made a bunch of mistakes and they lost to the Houston Cougars. They made a bunch of mistakes and they lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Two of the top 5 teams in the country. And you can't make a bunch of mistakes against top 5 teams. You can't do it. And what 3 games has shown me is that this Oklahoma team is not a national championship caliber team. But what 3 weeks of football has shown me is that there's no one in the Big 12 up to the caliber of Ohio State and Houston. Sorry, not there. Sorry if that offends you, Oklahoma State. Sorry if that offends you, TCU. Sorry if that offends you, Texas. But there's no one in this conference that's at the caliber, at playing at the level of football that Houston and Ohio State are playing at. I still think Oklahoma has the best defense in the country. Strike that. I still think Oklahoma has the best defense in the Big 12. I do. I mean, name me a good defense. What defense have you seen? I think Kansas State's really salty. I like their defense. I like what they're doing. You should never, ever, ever underestimate a Bill Snyder team. And that's what's coming next for Oklahoma's next home game. But before you get to Kansas State, you got to go on the road and play TCU. You got to go down to the Cotton Bowl and play Texas. Have you seen TCU's defense? I mean, Gary Patterson is normally a guy who coaches defense and coaches defense very, very well. But you think things are down at one position for Oklahoma's defense? They're down across the board for TCU's. South Dakota State, Arkansas, even Iowa State, which I believe right now at this point, it's a close toss-up between Iowa State and Kansas. But I think Iowa State's probably the worst team in the Big 12 right now. And they even found success against TCU. I think we're learning that Texas's win over Notre Dame is not what we thought it was. I think this Texas team is better than what they were a year ago. I think that's clear. But you tell me Cal, who put 50 points on the Longhorns, you tell me that offense is better than some of the offenses Texas is going to play in the Big 12? I don't think so. TCU? I'm curious to know how many punts that Texas Tech. I'm all over the place tonight, aren't I? I'm curious to know how many punts Texas Tech has actually forced this year. Texas Tech, they're not the worst team in the Big 12, but they're probably the worst defense in the Big 12. And Oklahoma State, there are no defenses in the Big 12 that are worth their salt. And I think Oklahoma's pretty good. It's just 2 of the first 3 weeks of the season, they've played 2 of the top 5 teams in the country. And I think people are recognizing that. I mean, they're sitting there 1-2 on the season. So you got to drop them in the polls. But the AP dropped them as low as they could drop them and keep them in. Coaches poll, man, they're just on the outside. If it went down that far, they'd be number 26 in the coaches poll. What that tells me is that a 1-2 team still has a lot of respect in the media, still has a lot of respect amongst the coaches, and they're saying, hey, we get it. We get what you've done. You could probably count the coaches on one hand that would line up to play the first 3 weeks that Oklahoma has. There's not a lot of coaches out there who would sign up and say, yeah, give me Houston to start the season in Houston. Give me Ohio State 2 weeks later. And people are saying, we get it. And in Oklahoma, yeah, they're dropped, but they're still in. And right now, you're looking at Baylor as a top team in the Big 12. West Virginia is undefeated. But I don't think anybody's lining up to sing their praises just yet. And Baylor's going to have a good offense, and Oklahoma better get that corner position figured out before November. Well, they better get it figured out in the next 2 weeks. But there's nothing that Oklahoma has displayed, in my opinion, that disqualifies them from the Big 12 hunt. And there's no dominant team in the Big 12. The Big 12 does not have a national championship caliber team right now. They don't. Including Texas, including Oklahoma. But that doesn't mean it's all bad football. And we as Oklahoma fans, we are of the mindset that it's 8 or nothing. It's national championship or nothing. We got to have number 8. And we want it. We want it bad. But think about this for just a second. Think about the number 7. 7 national championships on record for the University of Oklahoma. Now, obviously, there's Oklahoma could always go the Alabama route, and they could claim way more than 7, but they don't. They do it the right way. 7 national championships on record for the University of Oklahoma. Do you know Oklahoma started playing football in 1895? Yeah, it was a one-game season, then they lost. But 1985, they won a national championship. 1895 was when Oklahoma started playing football. 1900, they played a 5-game season. It wasn't until 1908 that they went to a 10-game season. What am I giving you a history lesson for? Over 100 years of football. And you got 7 national championships. It's not like they're passed out like they're pieces of candy. It takes a special team under special circumstances to win that thing. And while you could go and you could claim more, like Alabama, you could claim more, like Notre Dame, than you actually have won, that have actually been awarded to you. Oklahoma certainly could do that. They don't do it. 1911, the Sooners went 8-0. You could claim a national championship there. If you're Alabama, you do it. They went 8-0. They won by an average score of 35-2 in 1911. 1918, 6-0. Won by an average score of 46-1. Sure, you could claim a national championship there. 65-0 was Oklahoma's average conference score in 1918. So there's great teams of the past. There's great teams of the distant past, and there's great teams in Oklahoma's future. I guess the point I'm making is, yeah, it sucks. It sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And for those of you out there crying for Bob Stoops' head, I'm first of all going to tell you I get it. I get the frustration. I get the disappointment. I even get the anger. But I'm asking you if you get the perspective. There's a reason why for every team in America, the conference championship is the first goal. because only four of what 130 FBS teams, only four get to play for a national championship. And this year, Oklahoma won't be one of those four. They're a year removed from it. And while that was the expectation, the reality is a little bit different. But I don't think you're going to see an Oklahoma team travel to Fort Worth in 2 weeks and just kind of go through the motions. I think you're going to see an Oklahoma football team that's been battled and tested, a team that knows their limitations, a team that's taken their lumps, and they're going to go to work. There's not a team on TCU's schedule to the caliber of Houston. The Frogs haven't played a team to the caliber of Ohio State. And while Oklahoma lost both of those games, it prepares you for something, right? Big 12 Conference has a big black eye right now. And not just because of Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma losing to Ohio State, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. There's no way to dance around that. You play one of the top teams in the country and you lost, and you proved you're not a top team anymore. But man, we're talking about it. We're talking about a conference that a week ago went 0-2 against the MAC. And then in the marquee games of the weekend, you have Oklahoma State who beats Pitt, which is probably the best win of the weekend for the Big 12. You got Kansas getting throttled by Memphis. Louisiana Tech loading up 45 points on Texas Tech. Red Raiders win. But come on, 45 points? And then you have the Texas Longhorns, who still, to their credit, I believe, have the best win in conference. But that Notre Dame team is not what we thought they were at the beginning of the season. Kind of like what people are saying about Oklahoma. That Notre Dame team was not a top 10 team. And the Oklahoma Sooners were not a top 10 team. And that loss by the Longhorns on Saturday night proved that the Texas Longhorns are not a top 10 team. There's not one in the Big 12. And the Big 12 has essentially eliminated itself. An Oklahoma State and Texas fan, they're saying, well, wait a minute, you guys lost to Houston, and you were saying that if you won out, you'd still be in. Why doesn't that apply to Texas, and why doesn't that apply to Oklahoma State? Yes, that's exactly what Texas and Oklahoma State fans sound like. I'm spot on with that impression. And the reason why it doesn't work, the reason why that doesn't hold water for Texas, and the reason why it doesn't hold water for Oklahoma State, is because your losses, I'm sorry, Oklahoma State, you were jobbed, but you're never going to overcome this loss to Central Michigan. In Texas, you lost to a 2-1 California team who put up 50 points on you. 50 points. Before Saturday night, Texas's best win was against Hawaii, 51-31. They lost to San Diego State, 45-40. And they beat Texas, 50-43. That loss does not in any way, shape, or form equal the magnitude of the loss Oklahoma had with Houston. Different opponents. Houston may very well run the table. Ohio State may very well run the table. When you lose one of those two, you still have a puncher's chance. But the Big 12 is out. But as a college football fan and as an Oklahoma Sooners fan, I mean, you got to jump on board and be excited about what's going to be a wide open conference race. How good is Baylor? How good is West Virginia? The only two undefeated teams left in the conference. Should be fun. How good is Oklahoma? The reality is we don't know how good Oklahoma is. We don't know the answer to that question. We don't know how good they are. And the truthful statement here is we also don't know how bad they are. We know right now they look terrible at the cornerback position, opposite of Jordan Thomas. We know right now they look very inconsistent at the quarterback position from one of the guys who's supposed to be one of the marquee players in the country. But when your two losses are to two of the two best teams in the country, you don't know how good you are. And on October 1st, we'll get to start seeing that when Oklahoma takes to the road to Fort Worth to play TCU. A road game that won't be as difficult as the trip that they took to Houston. And we'll see. But right now, you're sitting at 1-2. And you're barely in the top 25 in the AP. You're barely outside the top 25 in the coaches. And there's nothing at all that would indicate that this team cannot go 9-0 for the remainder of the season. Now, that doesn't get you anywhere. I don't think that gets you a sniff at the college football playoff. Unless the college football world just falls apart. It doesn't give you a sniff at the playoff. But it gets you into probably the Sugar Bowl. And the reality is a 9-0 run at the end of the season, you start building your resume for 2017. But Oklahoma's got issues that have to be addressed. The good news is they're going into the bye week. They can address those issues. Thanks for listening, everybody. Sooner Nation Podcast, heartland-sports.com. I'm Matt Hofeld. Would love to hear your thoughts. You can email us, heartland-sports@yahoo.com. Tweet us @SportsHeartland, or leave a comment. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you paying attention. Share us your thoughts. Where are you in the whole miss? I think there's still reason to be excited. I think there's still reason to look forward to a great season. I think Oklahoma is going to put up some crazy, crazy offensive stats in Big 12 play. And you'd be a fool to miss it. But for now, be frustrated, be angry, be upset. Get it all out of your system this week. Because we're a week away from game week one more time. Have a fantastic week wherever it takes you. Boomer Sooner, everybody.
When I wake up, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, well, I know I'm gonna be